again, everybody, and welcome to Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22 alongside Dave Matter and Gabe DeArmond. I'm Bo Bayman, and I know I've heard of roster turnover, but this is ridiculous with the Missouri basketball team. The transfer portal has been wide open, not only for Missouri, but for everybody, guys. And aside from Javon Pickett and Kobe Brown, I can't think of, Wilmore might be back, but that's it, right? That's all that's left on the roster from the team that walked off the court 2 Saturdays ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, and I understand why it's alarming, but also it shouldn't really be a big surprise to anybody. We knew the seniors were leaving. I think the surprise is that Mark Smith seems interested in playing another year in college, but I don't think that door was open here. We've been saying Pinson was going to leave for 12 months. Parker Brown didn't play. Torrance Watson didn't play. Ed Chang literally didn't play. So, I think we always knew that this was going to be a very new roster. It's just a little more new than we expected.
My question was going to be, what was your favorite memory in the Ed Chang era? But, Dave, Xavier Pinson, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, but now Torrance Watson's in. They've got a lot of retooling to do, but on the positive side, fans were worried, hey, what's next year going to look like? It's all rebuilding. But now Konzo Martin and the coaching staff can go into the transfer portal themselves and remake this roster the way they want to make it.
Right. And that's the positive about it. It's positive as of now. We'll see who they end up bringing in. There's no certainty they're going to bring in guys that are going to make this team better. But I think there's a better chance of that happening than just wishing and hoping that guys who haven't shown a whole lot would turn into great players or even above average players, just given more opportunities. I mean, you can throw a stick into the transfer portal and hit some guys that could give you more than what they got out of some of these guys that are leaving. And it's hard to grasp, I think, for a lot of fans. For one, some people just don't understand why you would quit, when really it's just a new door opening up for these guys. The grass is always greener somewhere else. They have the opportunity to do that now. Missouri fans can't go into the portal. They can't really switch teams. I mean, fans don't do that. They're loyal to the same team. But coaches and players, they can move around, and players now can move around easier than ever before. So it's going to happen. So as long as you find players that are better than the ones that are leaving, and I don't think that'll be really hard to do, this could be a positive thing for Missouri. And everybody is going to be retooling to some degree. Mm-hmm. Some teams just more than others.
And this has been the result of the extra year, like the 0 year. There's so many people in the portal, over 1,000 people in, just because there's so many players out there, Gabe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's everywhere, and people need to understand it's not always going to be like this. I mean, yes, there are more transfers than ever. I think last year was, 700-800. This year's probably going to be more like 12, 13, 1,400. But that's because everybody gets another year, and also because there's this great anticipation that the sit-out year is going to be waived, at least for this year, maybe permanently, but at least for this year. So everybody knows, hey, I can start over. And there's no way I'm going to have to sit out, because if they don't waive that, I don't know how people field teams. Missouri would be playing with 6 guys or 7 guys if they don't waive that rule. So this is a one-time thing. And it's just part of what it is. Again, we can go back and forth over the issue, but Chris Beard just left $5 million a year at Texas Tech to go to a school in the same conference. If coaches can do that, players should be able to as well.
The other thing, Dave, that I think is you still have young kids who, when somebody else enters the portal, they get talked about and their name's out there. And then so somebody says, well, I'm going to go do that. I want them to come want me. And I think that's inviting.
Right. And, some players more than others love that recruiting process. They love getting the fancy edits put on Instagram and Twitter and getting some love shown their way. Some of them didn't really maybe experience that as much coming out of high school, either their choice or whatever. And now they want to do it over again. And that's fine. I mean, they should get that chance. And maybe a guy like Parker Brown can find another program where he fits in a little bit better, a little bit differently, maybe not. But I think he's, if you've been in the program 3 years, like he and Torrance Watson have, you kind of know, okay, I know how this staff feels about me. And the reverse is true too. Those coaches know what they can get out of those players. And, if they believe they've hit their ceiling, then, hey, I'll go out and find somebody else who might have more upside. And I think that's got to be the hope for Missouri with losing these guys. Pinson's in a different category because he was a guy who could have been an all SEC type player, but we've discussed that so much here that it just wasn't going to work out with him. These other guys, I think Missouri can go out and find somebody else that can, not just replace their production, but be better.
Gabe, the one thing that you mentioned, Mark Smith wanting to play again and going to Kansas State. I mean, they were terrible last year. It's not, I guess that's just wanting to play one more year, right?
Yeah, it seemed a little weird on both sides to me, honestly. Like, I'm not sure why K-State takes that guy with all the young players they have, but, hey, that's fine. And nobody's told me this, but just looking from the outside, it seems to me probably that Mark's first choice, if he was going to play another year, would have been to play it here. I mean, the guy played second most minutes on the team. He shot as much as he wanted to. He was given free reign on this team. So that indicates to me maybe that was kind of I don't want to say pushed him out, but probably didn't fight hard to keep him to stay. It probably was kind of like, yeah, I think we're kind of ready to move on to this next wave of guys.
I think we talked about him last week, but Amari Davis, former Green Bay guard, Dave, has decided to come to Missouri. He will have 3 years of eligibility left. He was the 2019-2020 Horizon League Freshman of the Year. So he's the first one. He's the first domino to fall, you can say. There's still, is there 4 scholarships open then?
Yeah, I think that leaves 4. And I know the staff would like to get to 12. Gonzo's not always filled out that 13th spot. He's even said before that 13th guy is always unhappy. But then again, he's gone into Summersden and found somebody kind of on the scrap heap and taken a chance on him and done that before. But they played with 12 this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do it again, unless just somebody else pops up. You just never know. And also what he says in April and May not be true in June and July, depending on who's available out there. I think Davis is an interesting player. He scored a lot of points at Green Bay. He's not much of a 3-point shooter. He improved a lot from his freshman to sophomore year. He's more of a mid-range guy, and modern college basketball says that's a more inefficient shot, but that's kind of what beat Missouri a lot this year. Think of Mississippi State, think of Ole Miss, Arkansas has some mid-range shooters. So if that can beat Missouri, maybe it can be something that they can have in a guy like that. They just need scorers. There's no doubt about that. They need guys that can score from the perimeter, whether it's inside the arc or not, guys that can get to the free throw line, guys that can fill it up. And that's what he's done at Green Bay. How much does that translate at a high major? We'll find out. But I thought that was a good start.
And Gabe, they got a lot of positions open. So you're going to hear about, they're going to go after anybody that they feel can fill a spot just because they got so many spots open.
There are so many names out there, some that have some connections to Missouri and some that have no connections at all and are just popping up, and Missouri has reached out to them. But the weird thing about the transfer portal is this: anybody who is capable of playing at this level, they're going to have a lot of dudes. Missouri reached out to a guy from Fordham yesterday. Duke has reached out. This is college basketball now. This is recruiting in the spring. This has really replaced the junior college thing. You don't hear about many JUCO players at this point. It's mostly transfers. And so, yeah, there are tons of names. We've listed 10 guys. Then there were some more this week. There'll be some more next week. We're just kind of updating it every week with, hey, here are the guys that the Missouri somehow been connected to. And that doesn't even include a kid like Tamar Bates from Overland Park originally, who was going to go to Texas, and then Shaka Smart, beat the posse out of town. And now Tamar Bates is looking for a new school. So there's some of those too. And I know that Konzo really developed a reputation his first 2 years here for kind of taking advantage of that market. And he's got to do it now.
Yeah, no question. Let's go to the tournament now. As we dissected last week, Oklahoma beat Missouri. Then Lon Kruger retires. This morning, we find out Roy Williams is going to retire. The teams that are still left out of the SEC, well, there aren't any. Arkansas and Alabama made the runs. They just couldn't get to the Final Four. Your Final Four is really a hodgepodge when you think about it, when you have Baylor, Houston, UCLA, an 11 seed, makes it from the first four all the way there. And then the favorite, if you ask me, is Gonzaga. It should be a pretty decent Final Four. And I think the tournament has been tremendous. Maybe it's just because we're appreciating it more after not having it last year, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. I think UCLA has been maybe the best story of the tournament. Now they go up against the best team. And it looks like on paper a total mismatch, but you can't count out a team at this point that has made it all the way from the first four. But Gonzaga looks like just an absolute, Goliath here, and nobody's come close to even challenging them in the second half of games. They look like the team that's going to walk into the championship game. And then that other game I think can be really competitive. I mean, Kelvin Sampson has that Houston program. They are as good as any high major out there. They haven't had a very tough road in the tournament for sure. I mean, they've beaten a bunch of double-digit seeds, but they're really playing well. That's going to be a tough out. And Baylor, if it weren't for Gonzaga this year, we'd be talking about how Baylor is far and away the best program in the country. I mean, they were in position to be a number one seed a year ago before the tournament got canceled. They're so good on both ends of the floor. So many good athletes out there. I think the thing that the best matchup for sure, most entertaining, would be Gonzaga Baylor in the championship game. But I wouldn't write off Houston because that is a scrappy team with some good players, and we know Kelvin Sampson's a great coach.
What did you think about the SEC teams there, Gabe? Especially, Alabama and Arkansas. They made a run at it, just couldn't get all the way through.
I mean, the SEC was, in the end, I thought what we thought it was. One really good team, one pretty good team, and Bama's a really good team. They went 11 for 25 from the free throw line. That's just a freak thing that ends up beating you and still got to overtime, Arkansas was playing really well. They have a lot of guys, made a nice run, and then ran into – look, I texted Dave during the Baylor-Arkansas game. That was the first time I'd seen Baylor play. Davion Mitchell's the best player in the history of basketball. I've never seen anybody better than him. I mean, their entire offense for like a 10-minute stretch was him dribbling at the top of the key for 8 seconds and then just deciding when he would immediately blow by the guy in front of him. And it worked every single time. So I think this has been a classic tournament where the first 2 weeks are all about the underdogs and the upsets. And then we're probably going to end up with the two teams that we all thought were going to be there at the beginning of the tournament.
And I believe Gonzaga and Baylor haven't played, but they were supposed to,
right?
And the game got canceled. So I'm with you, Gabe. That's the game that everybody wants to see. There could still be an upset that Houston could get there. You never know. UCLA would be something. But if we get Gonzaga Baylor, I think that's what everybody wants to see, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. And they both feature a transfer from an SEC team. Nemhard at Gonzaga from Florida. Mitchell started off at Auburn. If you look at, when the portal really started blowing up, I looked at the rosters for the teams, I think in the Sweet 16, they're loaded with teams that start multiple transfers. So it's going to be the wave of the future going forward. It's already here. Both teams, I think, are built to win a championship. It'd be a great final, but Houston will obviously earn that spot if they get there, because they are not going to go down easily. UCLA has been my favorite team to watch, probably because they've been on more than anybody because they've played the most games. It's been a great story, but I'm afraid that run is about to expire.
But any of the four would be an awesome story. I mean, either you've got the first undefeated team in 45 years.
Right.
You got a team that legitimately the coach took over when a player killed another player and they couldn't play non-conference games. You've got, Houston would be there for the first time since Hakeem and Drexler. And then, UCLA is UCLA, UCLA is the underdog of the Final Four. That's where we're at.
And UCLA was either the last one or the last one of the two last in. So that would be a great story. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll check your tweets. And then a little bit later on, we'll talk about the other goings on at the University of Missouri. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines. Dave Matter and Gabe DeArmond. I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks, as always, for joining us. And we thank you for your tweets. We're at Tiger Sidelines. And the first one says, are there rumors of a change in defensive schemes or change in the personnel to pressure the quarterback? Less than 20 sacks last year. That's from Russ. He wants to know Will D-line Zoo perhaps return?
It's not really.
Well,
a
I mean, there's
rumor. Yeah. I mean,
there's not rumors of it changing. I mean, the scheme is changing. We know that much. Steve Wilkes, new defensive coordinator. They're going to play a lot more, zone coverage than they did last year. And so the scheme is definitely going to change. Whether it's going to work or not, we don't know.
and they're back to a base 4-man front. I know last year they really played with 3 guys down most of the time. And they say we're getting inside baseball here, but more one gap responsibility. So those guys don't have to kind of pick and choose which side of their lineman or which side of their gap they go on. Maybe that will result in more sacks, more pressure. I mean, it comes down to having guys. Do they have enough guys, the kind of guys that can beat blockers in the SEC? We'll find out. A lot of it's the same pieces from last year. Just guys are older, and maybe having a little bit more depth will help out fourth quarter of games and guys aren't as tired.
And we'll see if not having Nick Bolton as the coordinator on the field makes a big difference. Dan wants to know, the Supreme Court justices took turns kicking around the NCAA lawyers this week in favor of player compensation. Do you think there will be a cap that colleges are allowed to pay, or do you think that every player must receive an exact amount?
We're so far away from having any idea what's going to happen with this. I mean, look, we don't know. I don't know how it's all going to go. I mean, I don't think we're going to turn this into professional sports, but I do think it's certainly heading toward, players getting more than just a scholarship. But look, when you start getting into compensation, there's a lot that comes with that. These kids are going to basically be employees at that point. And there's a lot of things that I think maybe they don't know that would be a part of that.
Yeah. And I think before you get to the compensation part, which no one is really fighting that strongly for right now, it's more about the name, image, likeness. And that's money from businesses and boosters and donors going to these athletes more than coming from the schools themselves. And the NCAA they're trying to kick that can down the road, every year so they can avoid that. But they're running into the point now where states are enacting their own legislation for name, image, likeness. I think Mississippi's is coming up here pretty soon, and Florida and California. Missouri's dabbled in it a little bit, hasn't gotten as much traction. So I think that's the first step. And then as far as just the compensation, I don't know how they'll ever tackle and figure that one out. I mean, the Supreme Court, just reading and listening to some of the comments the other day, they're basically saying your system is a complete sham. This does not work. But the Supreme Court does not want to be responsible for shutting the whole thing down either. So I don't know what the end game really is here.
It was kind of amazing seeing some of the quotes and going, well, yeah, like we've known that for 40 years. Why are we just talking about this now?
Right.
And it was amazing to see the NCAA just take it from the Supreme Court justices arguing over $6,000 being a lot when they're making, billions on this tournament that they're running right now.
Right.
All right, we will take a break. When we come back, Diamond Sports, one team doing pretty well, one team struggling very much so. We'll talk about it. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines. Gabe Yarman, Dave Matter, and I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks, as always, for joining us. Let's switch to the Diamond now. The 17th ranked softball team took 2 of 3 from number 24 Auburn over the weekend. They won the first 2 games 2-1, 6-5. They dropped the finale 3-zip. During the week, Mizzou beat SLU 10-4. They're 25-7. They're 3-3 in the league. They traveled to South Carolina for 3 for the game against the Gamecocks this weekend. Larissa Anderson's team is doing enough right now to get them into talk for the postseason. And if they continue to win series on the weekend, they're going to be in the postseason and grab a regional spot.
Yeah, if you win SEC series, home or away, you're putting yourself in a really good position. I mean, they're doing a great job. They don't seem to have any real weaknesses. So she's just done an excellent job with that program and getting it back to where, I don't know if it's back to where it was at its peak under early wine, but they're knocking on the door.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And especially if they get a regional and just kind of build on those and continue to build on those, they'll be all right. On the other side of the coin, however, baseball continues to struggle. They go 0-3 against Vanderbilt, then drop just a game against Kansas that you just can't lose. They're up 7-0 after 5 innings of play. They give up 8 runs in the bottom of the 7th to lose 10-9. They go 0-4 on the week. And oh, by the way, they're now 8-16, 1-5, and they host Texas A&M for 3 this weekend. Steve Beezer's club is hurting, and I don't think there's any digging out from this game.
Yeah, I mean, the schedule should ease up. They just play like all SEC teams the rest of the way, pretty much. That Vanderbilt rotation is ridiculous. I mean, Kumar Rocker is probably going to be the #1 pick in the Major League Baseball draft, and he's probably not the best pitcher on their team, which is unbelievable. Al Leiter's kid, I think, last gave up a hit in last June or something like that.
That's cool.
So, they're unbelievable. No shame in that, but yeah, 8 runs in 1 inning to KU. I don't know anything about KU baseball. I'm assuming they're not all that good, but they lost a game last week on a pass ball, I think. When they pitch well, they can't hit, and when they hit well, they can't pitch.
The Kansas game, I didn't see the play, but Missouri had 2 outs in that big inning, and Kansas, they got an out at home for the 3rd out. Inning over, Missouri still up 9-5. Kansas requested a review of it. They reversed it, counted as a run. 3 batters later, 3-run homer, and they're down. So just brutal, just brutal. They don't even have luck on their side at this point. I mean, I don't know if the call was good or bad, but and I think Kansas is like 15-8, so they're a little bit better. But still, you're up 9-2 in the 7th inning. You got to win that game.
Everybody wants every game on TV until it beats you against KU.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, number 23 gymnastics will travel to Tuscaloosa to compete in the Tuscaloosa Regional 2nd round on Friday, April 2nd. The Tigers will compete against Oklahoma, Eastern Michigan, or Maryland, and Auburn will not compete because of COVID-19. So it gets a little bit easier for the gymnastics team, but good luck to them for sure. And football hosted Pro Day recently. I wanted to ask you guys, Dave, I'll start with you. How did the guys look from Mizzou on their Pro Day?
I was impressed with Tyree Gillespie. I mean, he put up a number, and it was one of those 40s too, where you watch it and you're like, wow, that's fast. I didn't even see it. I don't have a time on me, but he just looked fast. It ended up being like 4.38, which is really, really fast for a safety with a little size like he does. So I think he absolutely helped himself. Nick Bolton, I thought he looked fine. Watch him in the drills, thought he was fine. His 40 number was fine. And then you go on Twitter and it's like, oh gosh, he really hurt himself with some of his shuttle times and some of his short area quickness times. I don't know. I watched him play football for the last 2 years and thought he was the best player on the field most plays. So somebody's going to get a good linebacker in him. I don't care what we saw on Pro Day.
Well, and Gillespie probably made himself some money. I would imagine, Gabe, he could be one of those guys that all of a sudden you're like, man, we should have focused on him more at Mizzou.
Or why wasn't he this good at Mizzou? Because like he's been fine. But yeah, he made himself some money. It'll be interesting this year. I think there could be a lot more misses in the draft because kids are always better at their pro days on their own, campuses where they're familiar with everything. There is no combine this year. So pro days, all they're going to have to go on. And I think Gillespie might have played himself into day 2 of the draft, but I'll be interested to see what happens because I feel like we do this every year. The team you're familiar with, whether you cover it or you're just a fan or whatever, you overestimate those kids going in the draft. I mean, I think Larry Borum's probably going to get picked, but I'm not sure. I actually kind of would be surprised if Larry Roundtree and Josh Bledsoe do, because every year in the draft, what we fail to realize is, I didn't know Hofstra and Northeastern A&M had NFL players, but that's why these guys get paid hundreds of $1,000s to find those guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And they will be found. Soccer jumped out to an early lead against K-State, unable to put the Wildcats away. Game ended in a 3-3 draw. And men's swimming and diving placed 16th at the swimming and diving championship. So just wanted to get that in as well. So as we continue to try to talk basketball, and we'll talk about the roster rebuild, we'll also talk about the diamond sports as we go forward. But here we are in April finally, and we've made it. COVID, I mean, we've played football, we've played seasons, things are, knock on wood, going pretty well. And so you have to kind of think that things are going to return to form. They're talking about people in the stands at Faurot Field in the fall. maybe the worst is behind us, Gabe.
Well, and I do think that a lot of people across the country, and not just in the SEC, but that's what we focus on, deserve credit. Like, we mostly had a football season. We mostly had a basketball season. These things happened. Now, a lot of them happened without people there, and we'd like to see that change, because I don't know about you guys, but it really has changed sports for me. The way, just watching events without people there is weird, and basketball even more so. But some of these games where just nobody's there. I mean, look, I'm happy to get back to, if I could actually watch them, but watching a 25% capacity Kauffman Stadium. I mean, that's back to normal. Life's back now when a quarter of the seats at Royals games are filled. So
Absolutely. And like you said, as long as you can watch them, opening day is here. And so that's good news. All right. We'll talk about all of the goings on at Mizzou next week on Tiger Sidelines. I want to thank Brian and Matt behind the scenes. For Dave Matter and Gabe DeArmond, I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks as always for watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22. We'll see you next week, everybody.